Welcome to another episode of The Road Less Traveled. I'm your host, Evan Drisner, and I'm excited to have my guest, Alex Miller of Innovative Residential and Block Construction. But it's not that simple, and I'm excited to get into the story because I'm obviously in the construction industry, and I've seen the ebbs and flows over the last decade at least, and you've been a big part of that. But before we get to that, Alex, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you came from? Are you a Saskatoon guy?
Yeah, I originally from a farm just south of Avonlea, which is about 45 minutes southwest of Regina, here in Saskatchewan.
Yep.
So I'm originally from a farm.
I've seen the show, Road to Avonlea.
Road to Avonlea. Hey, I am from a road to Avonlea.
Okay.
I'm not sure I'm from the road to Avonlea,
yeah.
but it is true. My parents are farmers south of Avonlea, and then I graduated engineering, and I was out in Calgary for a bit, and then I came back here, raise a family.
So, you glossed over a lot, which is good because that's my job. My job is to get in there. So, farmer, southwest of Regina.
Yep.
Why engineering then? Like, were you supposed to be part of the family farm, or what interested you in engineering?
Nothing. What still interests me about engineering? Problem solving. Actually, it's an interesting story. Growing up in rural Saskatchewan, being from a farm, I learned a lot of things from my parents. Work ethic being one of them. Mm-hmm. Looking back now, I think you might call that child abuse, but but you know what? It was really rewarding. It was a great opportunity. I remember getting. Literally, my dad would take me out to the field in the morning, and I would be on the tractor picking rocks or doing harrowing, and the bus would come and pick me up in the morning and have to meet at a certain location. And I get the call in school, and while I'm at school, and people like Alex, the principal office, and it's like what's going on? My dad just saying, hey, can you make sure the bus drops you off here, and you can work, and Mom will bring you out supper, and anyways, and so I learned from a really young age hard work and that's really helped get me to where I am, and I'm very grateful of that. But I also have asthma, and being on a farm, it was very difficult because I was allergic to, it was a mixed farm, so we had cattle and grain. Okay. So allergic to
would be dust.
the dust. Yeah. Actually, for a lot of the harvests, I'd have to stay in town with my grandma.
Yeah.
But so I was allergic to everything on the farm, right? And so I always knew I wasn't going to be a part of it. And my dad was always... he's always an advocate for that, saying, it was actually, my dad lost his dad to a farming accident when he was young. Mm-hmm. And so he learned hard work, and he learned to kind of do it on his own. Mm-hmm. And so it was great that my brother and I could help.
Like you had no option at that point.
He was forced to, he was forced to. And he did well and defined success. I think he's very happy and he's very successful and he has his own joy. But he always knew that, for you to have a better life, it's probably not, to stay here on the farm. Yeah. And especially with the asthma and stuff, it was a given. So anyways, I remember, you get to that grade 11 or 12, wherever it was, and you have to start thinking next steps. What do you do? And university is just a common thing, right? And we didn't have a ton of guidance counselors guiding you in which direction. And so it was kind of like, you're going to farm, you're going to be a firefighter, you're going to go to engineering, you're going to be a teacher, a doctor. There's only a few options, really. Now, really, there's lots, but you only know what you know.
Of course.
And they said, you're good at math and science. So become an engineer. Okay, sure. They're older people than me. They know better than I do, so why not?
Exactly.
So that's really what led me down the road of saying, hey, take a look at engineering.
I mean, and like me knowing you over the last 10 years, it makes sense that you landed in engineering, just the way you process. Especially for an entrepreneur at your age, a young guy, young family, you've always been, in my looking from a different perspective, you've always been able to process information much more uniquely than most, and it's been fun to watch. So I'm not surprised engineering ended up there, but why did you pick, what kind of engineering did you pick?
So that's an interesting thing, and to be honest, I don't know if I process information because and that's what led me into engineering, or engineering
Or
taught me that
yeah,
skill.
yeah, fair
And
enough.
I actually think the engineering taught me more of that skill. But regardless of that, there was about seven, I think there were 7 disciplines at the time: agriculture, physics, mechanical, civil. I took mechanical engineering, and I still remember after a couple months into it, phoning my dad and saying, "This isn't for me." And he said, "Well, there's nothing left for you here at the farm. And we've talked about this. You're allergic to everything, and I don't manage that well. Stick with it, and you'll figure it out." And that was good confidence I needed, because it was tough. You know, I had to work hard for my marks. Every year my marks went up, but I had to work hard for it. I had to learn how to learn. I wasn't given the ability to just have that those smarts. And so I worked my way through mechanical engineering, built a great group of friends, and if it wasn't for that teamwork and that collaboration, I wouldn't have made it through, because it was a lot of late nights, a lot of weekends. Quite frankly, the first 4 years that we did it over 4.5 years, because we wanted some fun our last semester.
Yeah.
It was just too hard. I shouldn't say too hard, but it was hard. It was challenging. And we spent a bunch of time in evenings and weekends, but we persevered. And like I said, every year my marks kept going up. I had learned how to learn. And I looking back now, I'm really, really happy that I went into that. I think it would have been a flop between that and business. Later on, I've taken some business courses.
Yeah.
But I really, really admire what I was taught and the ability to process and kind of solve problems. So
it definitely has paid dividends in terms of going through the different economies that we've been facing in the last few years, is looking how can we process this and deal with it. So mechanical engineering, you did it in 4.5 years. How did you go from mechanical engineer to what was the game plan? Were you thinking you're going to be staying in Saskatoon? Did you already in that the half semester, was that when you started incubating these business ideas? How did you take the next step, and what did that step look like?
So like I said, I knew I was into engineering and I didn't really want to be there. And I knew already, based on some of the people I had met, and that I wasn't going to be the typical engineer. And that's not a negative. That was my personality. But my dad said, "You got to finish it, and then you'll figure it out." Right? And there's nothing wrong with good education. Just focus on that, and it'll be a part of your life. and I really am appreciative for that advice. When we pushed hard and we finished it, the last semester, it was just a ton of fun. I had 2 arts classes and 1 engineering class. And so I only had 3 classes. And I actually used that last semester to kind of find myself. So for the last 2 summers prior, I had jobs all throughout engineering, but the last 2 summers I had jobs out in Calgary. And I knew that I already had a full-time job offer in Calgary after my 4.5 year, after my last semester. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had a job offer lined up, and I was excited for it, and I'd already worked there the summer before, and I was excited to move to Calgary and to have that opportunity. But I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. And actually, it was at that last semester that I don't think I've ever read a book in my life that I didn't have to. As sad as that is. And it is sad when you think about it. I read 24 books that last semester. And they were all about financial freedom, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Wealthy Barber, a lot of those books. And the reason I did that is because I came from a financially poor background, very rich in many sense, what my parents gave me and the opportunities, but financially poor. And so I focused a bit on that, and I said, what do other people have in common that are more financially successful? And in those 24 books, I actually read, in those books that I read, I found that most financially successful people, or who had financial freedom, had businesses, investments, and real estate in their portfolio. So actually, it was the last year of university, my last semester, that I said, no matter what it is I do, I want to build a business out of investing in real estate.
Interesting. So, okay. So then you're going... So at that point, How are you processing that? Because that could have nothing to do with your degree. And you were fine with that?
100%. 100%. I already knew what I wanted to do. I think that was November or December of that year. My job started in January. I bought my first house, I think it was less than a month, or sometime in February, just over a month. My first house I bought within a month.
Yeah.
I had already ingrained in my head what my action plan was, and really the only way to do that was to start testing the boundaries, to start trying it out. So I was in Calgary, still doing the engineering role, and I had already learned kind of where I would go, and great opportunities. I mean, I did engineering for a year and a half, worked for a company out in Calgary, was in the States 6 or 7 times for training, fantastic opportunities. And I knew that there could have been a home for me there too. Yeah. But again, just that passion of wanting to build some financial freedom, I really started dabbling into what business about real estate looked like. And within that first year and a half that I worked for the oil and gas company, I was also doing the investments on the side. And my business partner and I, a guy that I worked with at that same firm, actually we also graduated engineering together, because we both have some different skill sets, really worked well together and continue to this day to work well together. Yeah. And actually we had accumulated, I think, 15 homes in that year and a half.
Was that in Calgary?
In Calgary, yeah.
Okay. So do you still have those?
We don't have any of them anymore. Yeah, that was back at a time when the finances, the financing game was more, if you have a heartbeat, if you have a pulse, you can have a house.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, looking now, there's never a chance that would have happened. But
yeah, that's interesting. So you're in Calgary. You're at that point working with your business partner, but he's not your business partner. You went to school together. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but then I want to get back into it because I know my first memory of you is seeing you in the newspaper in Saskatoon. So stick with us. There's more story with Alex Miller and talking about the business you grew from scratch. Looking forward to hearing from you. Welcome back to The Road Less Traveled. During the commercial break, I was laughing because I misheard you when you were talking about being a farmer and the kid, and you were doing heroin. That's what I'm like. Well, maybe that's what farmers do.
Harrowing.
That's a city kid for you. Harrowing. Don't even know what that is. So you're in Calgary, working at an engineering firm.
Yep.
You've done some investments in properties. You're working with a guy that you went to school with, and you're seeing some strengths in him that you don't have, and vice versa. So my first memory of you is seeing you in the Star Phoenix in Saskatoon, but obviously there's a story in between there. So how are two young guys virtually living the dream at that point? You have some investments at your age that most people wouldn't have had. You have a career path that's strong and has probably nothing but potential, and there's security in that. What makes you jump, and what brought you back from Calgary to Saskatoon?
There's a lot of good questions there.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is I started working for that oil and gas company, and believe it or not, my business partner, Tyler, he started there 6 months before I did.
Okay.
And we were in the same department, and he was my boss. And it was cool because he dealt with the financing pieces of oil and gas, reservoir analysis, and I dealt with the operations piece of oil and gas, the production side. So you have reservoir, production. Yeah. Now, fast forward, how many years later, he did finance, I did operations. So it was really kind of neat that it was those pieces that made a successful oil and gas division that we looked after, and it's the same successful pieces that made Innovative. Yeah. But it was interesting. I remember, like I said, I bought my first house with just after a month of being there, and then we started talking because we had these similar ideas of investing and maybe growing a business together. And I remember it got to a point where we had kind of so many things on the side that we were now doing that I felt, you know what, if we're going to do this, we got to do this full time. Maybe we could have stretched it a bit longer, but I almost felt guilty because, this is my true passion now. Yeah. And it was interesting because, in June of 2006, that is when I quit my job. I got married that August, and so to this day, I always still tell my wife, "Hey, you married me when I was unemployed. Okay?
Yeah, exactly.
So you knew what you were getting into."
Yeah, exactly.
And honestly, without that strong support, I mean, you know, a lot of entrepreneurs, you need that back end
Oh, yeah,
support.
for sure.
Honestly, and it's more than the back end; it's the foundation that grounds you. Without my beautiful wife and our foundation, I wouldn't be where I am. Right. So, but yeah, it was interesting. So we were doing some stuff in Calgary and.
Well played, by the way.
What's that?
That pitch. I should say something about my beautiful wife.
Oh.
Great foundation for me, too. I wouldn't be able to film this show
There you
without
go.
her.
There you go.
Thank
you. We talked about this, right?
Yeah.
Totally scripted.
Yeah.
No, it was interesting because as we were doing this, what I found is, and I really liked Calgary in some sense, where it was a large enough city, and I was learning a lot. But Saskatoon was still kind of more home.
Okay.
My wife's originally from Saskatoon,
Okay.
well, east of Saskatoon, Yorkton. But this is where her home base was for most of her life. And this was kind of home. Saskatoon was home. And so we said that, you know what, when we did move out to Calgary, that we knew it would kind of be, we thought it might be temporary and we might come back to Saskatoon. But as soon as this opportunity presented itself, we're going to start a business. I said, hey, I could be a bigger fish in a smaller sea. Is kind of how I thought about it from an investment point,
for
right?
sure.
And you know, Calgary is pretty overwhelming at the time. So we're doing some investments, but there was another business partner, a really good friend of mine, Derek, that headed up our operations in Saskatoon. And so, you know, it was only natural that I also come back. That's where my wife and I are from, and we're happy, and I could help grow our business here in Saskatoon. And yeah, to your point of the doing that unique project where we were in the paper, you know, that's a whole story onto itself of kind of how we ended up meeting these people. But long story short, there was an opportunity to move some buildings from kind of a derelict part of the city. Now, they had been renovated under a program a few years before, so we really didn't have to do much to them, and we weren't really kind of capable or allowed to do much to them, but except pick them up, cut them in half, move them halfway across the city, and put them back together. So that was our first big project.
Yeah.
And we did 78 homes like that, 10 sixplexes and 9 duplexes. And yeah, we picked them up, moved them halfway across the city, and put them back together. And that was during that project, my business partners and I, where Tyler and I added a lot of the value, and Derek and I were more on the operations, but where Tyler and I kind of added the value was Tyler was more on the finance piece, kind of similar on the reservoir on that oil and gas, and as I was the production, I was on the operations piece. And so that that relationship continued to blossom, and he worked with the city and the local or in the different federal and provincial jurisdictions to create some of the first-time homebuyers programs.
Okay.
And I worked on some of the operations on physically moving the units and getting everything put together and making sure the overall success of the project.
So is that really the birth of Innovative then? Those because I mean you glossed over it. You guys were some of the first people to bring in that first-time home buyers option into the buildings.
Yep.
And then you're moving old buildings originally, right? That was kind of the start. But then you started looking at, okay, how can we do this even more? And then you started doing modular stuff. So
like repeatable and
So how did that go? Like, so you just finished moving houses and go, okay, now what?
Yeah, well, it was kind of interesting because we were doing some of the investments, right? Buying some homes and some flips and some holds, and we stumbled across this opportunity to move some of these barrack units that had already been built. But, you know, what's the real value in that? And it was kind of twofold. If you could move the building successfully, and if you could ensure that the programs were there successfully, that you could marry the two together. And Saskatoon at that point in time had a really big problem with affordable housing. They actually came out with a mandate that they wanted over 2,500 units to be built over the next number of years. There was a real lack of housing. And there's a couple different ways that you can do that. And so again, Tyler on the financial piece helped our local government create and work with the feds on a really unique program, mortgage flexibility support program, to help first-time home buyers in. And from a cost perspective, we could capitalize on existing buildings, and then you can marry the two together, and actually we could solve. So that was the start to the program and to the opportunity down that path. But again, there's only so many of those buildings that you can use. The program was successful, and that was built up really well. And so then as we started to move through the operations piece, we looked at how can we do this on a more scalable format. And we could build housing traditionally, stick frame, but the market was actually really, really busy. And at that point in time, we hadn't done a bunch, and they're kind of like, "Who are you guys?"
Yeah, of course.
And why would I quote to you? And the prices just didn't make any sense, especially when doing affordable housing.
No, and it was so, like you said, it was so busy. Framers are charging a ton, suppliers are
It was
charging.
crazy. Yeah. The overall market trends. I mean, it was really crazy at that particular piece. It was just everything was skyrocketing. So we tried to find an engineered solution to building homes that we could at least provide enough supply to what the market needed. So I remember getting in the vehicle and we toured, at that time, I think it was about 8 different facilities in the prairies who built using modular construction. And so just a real quick background on that. Stick frame is a way that you can build, and that's the traditional way people build. You ship lumber to site and you put it all together in the rain and the snow, and I think it's horribly inefficient, but that's the way our industry has been and continues to be. There's other ways that you can put buildings together, panelized, modular. And anyways, we stumbled across one that I thought was more of a pre-engineered, more a superior way of building, the modular approach.
Yeah.
And so that kind of then took foot, and we've been using that ever since.
Yeah, and you guys, I mean, we only have so much time, or else we could talk about this forever, but I'll gloss over it a little bit because I know the story of it. So the economy's picking up here. You guys are mandated, not you, but there's a mandate to have this affordable housing. You guys are bringing in these modular units and really changing the landscape of Saskatoon. You have tons of employees. Then the market starts shifting, and that's where the pain came in.
Yep.
So I want to talk about that a bit because, I mean, it was very successful. You guys did a great job, but then there's pain of shrinking and then having to make tough staffing decisions and looking at, okay, is this really? So tell us a bit about how that kind of changed and what came out of that change for you in the business and where it's evolving.
Good, make me relive some of these tough pieces.
Yeah, of course.
No, actually, to be honest, it's those tough things in life that really teach you. And if you can continue to struggle and push through them, persevere, it's amazing what you can get on the back end. The market started to slow down in 2014.
Yep.
And we started to couple some of that slowdown of the sales with some other investments. We started to do some commercial and some residential. So it didn't impact us. It didn't impact us kind of immediately. We found other ways to continue to keep busy and define successful, but continue to be successful. What we learned a couple different things about business, and I'll be honest, for a number of years, it was very challenging for me, not only because we went through some tough times, but selfishly not understanding why. I'm proud to say, after going through it for many years, I now understand why, and I now know probably only enough about business to be dangerous, but I know more about business and I understand why. And everything from there was a market size, and we chipped away at that market. There was a market size. The overall market, the ongoing market size is probably only this big, but there was a pent-up market size.
Yeah, of course.
So we picked away at that, thinking, oh, the market size is bigger than it is. But there's only so much long-term.
Yep.
And everything about value proposition, what are you offering, and then became a ton of competition. Even the government this last year came out with their own competing program. And then also all the rule changes. OSFI came out with all these rule changes to hamper. They want to encourage more rentals, not home ownership. So anyways, it was a tough challenge to go through. We had to look back and find the grassroots of what made us unique and reposition ourselves for innovative to be successful, but also for ourselves to be successful in our own rights. And we had some great help with some consultants. A big shout out to BDC. They helped us. They were tremendous. They took us through a 2-year program to really, it was a high impact growth driver program that really helped us understand our skill sets and how we could capitalize on the future and the growth. That was really exciting. And so basically what came out of that is we're going to continue to build the affordable housing that we do.
Yep.
But we also now have an opportunity under big block construction to take the same principles of the operations piece and the financial piece and help other nonprofits and investors deliver a successful development.
So, like, who would who like? Are you talking Habitat for Humanity?
Yep,
stuff?
there's a bunch of nonprofits locally and outside of Saskatoon that we've been helping.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So, are you looking now for
Yeah.
like national or?
Well, right now, what I've learned, and as you start another business again, so we've been doing this for a couple years. It's awesome because there's so many things that we've learned from Innovative that we're capitalizing
Yeah.
on the new business, and Innovative continues to grow and it's doing well. But you set things up a little bit differently, and we know where we offer our value, and now understanding everything from the business model canvas to setting up what is your value proposition, to what makes you unique, to how do you compete, to what is your geographic locations, that market share, the market size. All of those things really now play in to how our business is growing. So we're focused on the prairies. So I've spent most of my time this last year not in Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Because we actually have a really good opportunity to provide value across the prairies. Maybe someday, outside the prairies, but right now we have lots of opportunity here.
That's awesome. I mean, it's not uncommon for the entrepreneurs I interview to say the best lessons they learned were either in the failures or in the hard times. And without a doubt, the construction industry has had some hard times, and it's good to see you thriving in that. Thanks so much for being my guest, Alex.
Appreciate you taking the time.
No problem. So make sure you stay tuned for upcoming episodes of The Road Less Traveled and, of course, other great shows on Shaw Spotlight.